This session was going to be titled Three Aging White Guys in Jeans, but we decided that we'd get more people if we retitled it. So I don't know if you've heard this, but there's a lot of talk about this thing called AI. It seems to be coming up everywhere. And we are going to talk about what I think is a very exciting development for higher education. And if only I can get the technology to work. There we go. So November 30th, 2022, the world changes. If you know the work of Carlota Perez, the economist, she would say, and she would remind us that AI is not new. It's been around for a long time, decades actually. But when she talks about catalytic moments, she talks about paradigm-shifting technologies, and then something happens where it sort of burst upon the world. And it feels that way since the release of ChatGPT. And I think the three of us here are in the camp that thinks the world is utterly changed. We don't think we're going to see an AI winter. We don't think we're going to see AI kind of, well, it will have some impacts, it will increase, no, this changes everything. And you've seen in the headlines a lot of attention that sort of reflects this notion, a lot of concern, a lot of policy making, et cetera. And we have seen AI sweep across industries with lightning speed. Whether it's the integration of ChatGPT into Microsoft's product suite, the releases of new LLMs and large language models almost daily. Every time we think we've come up against a technical limitation, there's another release, and we're like, oh, wait a minute, we can do this now. If you've looked at, as I have, at the NVIDIA presentation of a couple of weeks ago when the CEO just scared the hell out of me with the image of robots, scurrying around my home. Wayfair's allowing its customers now to redesign their homes using AI. Mass General, of course, and lots of other medical organizations moving with breakneck speed to implement incredible advances with AI. But higher education, we're a little more challenged. And my good friend and colleague, Ted Mitchell, head of American Council of Education, former undersecretary, will talk a little bit about that.
Thanks, Paul. I think for those of us who've been in both K-12 and higher education for any length of time know that we suffer from both too much data and too little access to those data. And we think that the AI revolution is an opportunity for us to solve that problem, not by creating a giant data lake in which we will all swim, but really creating a structured opportunity for institutions to continue to own their own data, to protect PII, but to make those data available across the industry to make better decisions about individual institutional practice and about policy. I've spent some time in the federal government, and so the glory of federal data is much on my mind. And we know anytime we even look at today's FAFSA news that we have a difficult time managing federal data. We've got prohibitions against using individual student data. And AI gives us the opportunity to just go right over the top, vault over the top of all of those problems. Higher education's shared goal is to improve knowledge, and AI is inherently the technology to do that. We want to do this collaboratively, and we want to do it well. Fei-Fei Li at Stanford posed the following. I actually wonder if you combined all the computing resources of all universities in the USA today, whether we could train an efficient ChatGPT model. So we're going to try to answer that question. And we're going to work with all of you to try to create a global data consortium. So the Global Data Consortium is what we hope will be a networked set of data from institutions and non-institutional players that will be accessible by query, and we'll also have data products that are put out on a regular basis to inform important issues like student success in different settings, student success with different backgrounds, the efficacy of some of the tutoring and learning modules that and platforms that we're looking at today. We believe that the answer to the data problem in higher education is a collective and networked answer, and that's what we hope the Global Data Consortium will be. We want to own our own data, we want to use our own data, but we want to make it available to generate uplift for the sector. George Siemens has been our technical architect so far, and I'm going to turn it over to George to describe the architecture of the Global Data Consortium. George?
Great, thank you. So one of the important aspects that we want to realize at a pretty fundamental level is, as Paul noted, AI's somewhat laggard uptake in the university sector as a transformative agent, as an opportunity to address a lot of the details that Ted touched on, which we have the capability to advance through effective adoption of AI. But by and large, our engagement in this space has been fairly limited. And so I think one of the first things we want to do is treat the data consortium as an on-ramp opportunity for universities to start developing capabilities and proficiencies with AI. And it's important to note that by itself, building and aggressively pursuing AI without a thoughtful and methodological exploration of the data environment, the data capabilities that we have, is sort of like putting on a luxury top floor on a shack out in a forest somewhere. So if you want a high potential, high impact future with AI in the higher education, post-secondary sector, it has to start with a quality data environment and a quality data architecture. So one of the primary outcomes we're expecting is that groups that join will have an opportunity to have a seat at the table to plan, to develop, and to deploy AI. So first and foremost, it is a systems level capability accelerator. We're focused also on this idea of co-development of these AI human capabilities, where we want universities or small state colleges or small regional systems who may not have sophisticated data expertise or who may not have the capability to get into the AI arena on their own. We want to, through a network effect, be able to initiate and direct some of this change. And if you consider this in light of, say, what's happened with the focus of big tech driving the higher education conversation around AI, we want to be producers, not consumers of the AI landscape. And so that's a critical shift. It's a capability building shift. It's a shift to producer, not only consumer in this environment. We're also very focused on the idea of security. Like, how do we make sure that the data that we're engaging with, student data, is properly stored, properly handled? And we've adopted really two primary foundations on how we want to work with that. One is the idea of a data mesh. We're not looking at exclusively a traditional data lake approach. Instead, we're saying through distributed domain ownership of data, you have the capability to effectively share high-value data that will allow us to train, develop, and deploy models and help universities solve local problems without you having to dump your data in a data lake that 3 years later you find now has been compromised in some way. So we're very much emphasizing local ownership of domain in a data mesh environment. And a second thing we're quite focused on as well is the idea of synthetic data. There was a recent report by Gartner that indicated within the next several years, they're expecting up to 70% of models being developed in the AI landscape are going to be done based on synthetic data. And so we want to be pioneers on that. Our goal essentially is to lift all boats in the higher education landscape through the capability onboarding process that we're trying to initiate here. There's also important questions that those of you who are in a leadership role in universities are likely already grappling with. And these questions relate to policies. They relate to fairness, they relate to ethics, they relate to equity, they relate to a lot of the responsible and meaningful use of AI. I think we're in a frenzied period of education where we're basically like, if it's available, we'll use it. And we haven't really gone deep into the questions. Now, there's a few that have. Emily Bender and others have been warning about this for a long time, but we haven't gotten into the should we be doing it and in what capabilities should we be doing it. So there are regulatory and institutional policy questions that need to be surfaced. And our intention is through this consortium to initiate that and to begin to surface a lot of those conversations. Now, one of the expectations that we have of our member partners is essentially they're going to join us by contributing systems-level data sets for collaborative projects. So if you imagine 20 or 30 university systems contributing data to this environment, the capability to deal with 8, 10, 20 million student records is a significant opportunity. We also aren't expecting to say, here's a consortium, give us your data, you're on your own. We're very much saying we are building and growing together. We are going to have opportunities for learning, opportunities for development. If you're a small regional college in an underrepresented community, we're going to have capabilities for your data scientists to work with a core team to do some sophisticated stuff that you might not be able to do on your own. We're also looking at the data governance questions, how we want to address that at a systems level and how we want to address that at a sector level. And ultimately, we want to sort of confront the reality of where we are. So we are now probably almost 18 months post ChatGPT. The corporate sector has built an amazing array of tools and technologies. Higher education, not so much. And we want to put some urgency into the conversation that says there's a window of opportunity to participate. But if we don't participate in that window now, that's closing. Decisions are being made for us by vendors and by big tech providers that have implications to fairness, to equity, to student experience. And so we want to get into that conversation rapidly and help to shape what's emerging in that environment. So the big question then becomes, what does this do for you? And what are the implications for your universities or your students? So we've put together a discussion paper that is going to be made available for you to review that unpacks our vision for the consortium. It unpacks our governance structure, but most importantly, it's an invitation. We will, throughout May and into early June, be hosting a series of webinars that'll target leaders, researchers, and technical individuals to unfold the data consortium concept and to solicit your feedback. So we're not here saying, hey, guess what, guys? We did it. We solved the problem. Just like in the future, there'll only be 5 universities, and it'll be run by MOOCs. So we're not quite at that stage of planning. We're very much saying we have an idea of how to solve the problem of onboarding universities into the AI world, and we have a model to do it, networked and collaborative approach. What we are saying instead is we need your input, we need your guidance, we need your very best technical thinking, we need solid, grounded criticism that says, oh, this is bonkers. If you really want to be successful, you need to do this. So consider this an invitation. You'll be directed to a sign-up sheet where you get notified of the discussion paper access in the next few weeks, and then the webinars that'll be hosted to unfold the discussion.
Thank you, George. I think the critical thing here, a couple of points to make. So one is the Data Consortium is a nonprofit. It sits with a neutral, respected player, ACE. It doesn't sit within any institution or commercial entity. It has foundation support to get off the ground. We hope to launch next year, so that would go live in 25. We have been having quiet conversations with providers and organizations who serve students, and if everyone who has put their hand up to say we want in stays in after they've reviewed the technical paper and the implementation, we would come out of the gate with about 30 to 35 million students represented in the Data Consortium globally. And the globally part of this is important because if we are going to protect against algorithmic bias, cultural bias, et cetera, we need the rich mix that is represented by all of the players who say they both see the value of this and are interested in participating. So we hope you'll consider it as well. As George said, the next phase now, 6 to 8 weeks, will be for technical comment on the architecture and the data privacy and the security, the architecture of this. The number one issue we have to face out of the gate is, can we protect student data? Will your data be secure? Will you stay in control of it? So as George said, that combination of using a data mesh, which keeps control in the hands of the contributing member, and synthetic data, which allows you to anonymize that data in a way that protects students, is really critical. So if you have a chief security officer, your head of IT, please have your people poke at this. Please have them go hard at it. Because if we fail at that, we can't get this consortium off the ground. But this is an amazing opportunity for this sector, which has been historically awful at the owning of its data, the understanding of its data, to really take control of the sector for ourselves in terms of AI, and also to lift all boats. Because as George said, there are lots of small, struggling institutions right now that don't have the capacity to implement AI, to understand their own data, to play in this space. And it could have such an enormous impact for their students and for those organizations. So this is a collective lifting of the industry's knowledge. Look, at the big players will be fine, right? There was an announcement inside higher ed, I think last week, that Stanford and Michigan are both building their own large language models. And I think one of the things that's been really interesting, and George is so good on this, is that when people say, oh, wait a minute, we don't want to give up, we're not sharing our data because that's where our competitive advantage is. It's sort of like having the clock still ticking 12 o'clock on your VCR. Like, you don't get the world we are in now, where the N of all actually allows us to do amazing work for the N of one. So our hope is that you agree and that you will take a look and that your organizations will say, we want to be part of this as well, to be part of this future. Thank you very much. Thank you to my colleagues for making this happen. And a real huge thank you to AC for being the leader and hosting and taking the leadership role that Ted and his colleagues are. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks.